If you've ever posted on social media about your chronic illness, disability, or cancer, then I guarantee you've been visited by a grief tourist. Let's look into that. Okay, I hear ya. What the heck is a grief tourist? Well, there's an older definition and there's a more modern definition. We're gonna look into the modern definition first. So the modern definition usually revolves around online and sometimes in person, but mostly online. Basically, someone you don't normally interact with and isn't really part of your social circle shows up just to comment on your grief, but is also not actually helpful in any way. Now, the reasons for this vary. Some people want to do it to feel better about their own lives. Some are there just because they want to portray a certain image. Basically, these people care more about you as your condition rather than having any empathy for you. It's more of a type of entertainment, usually, or virtue signaling. So this guy on TikTok had a great definition for what the online grief tourist is like. Take it away.
Cancer Pig here. So I was going through my For You page, and one of these lovely cancer creators popped up, and she used the term grief tourist, and I love it. Grief tourist is somebody who pops in your DMs, is like, oh, hey, I know what you're going through because my grandma or my great-grandmother died of cancer 20 years ago before I was even born, but hey, I know how you feel. Or, the high school friend who hasn't talked to you in 10 years and pops up in your messages, oh, I'm here, and I'm here to support you, and I hope you're doing okay, and blah, 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 and how you been? And it's like, I haven't heard from you in years. The only reason you're talking to me is because of my cancer. It's people who try to align themselves or inject themselves into your life because of your cancer, and they want to be, overly supportive and act like they're there for you when in reality they're really not. And it's a thing.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's a real thing, and it happens all the time. The funny thing is, some people on Instagram have actually learned how to take advantage of the grief tourists, and you'll notice they are disabled or chronic illness influencers who talk about nothing but the worst of the worst of the worst constantly and only about their illness. And that seems like it's their entire identity. But really what they're doing is they're banking on these people who claim to care about you. But yeah, these people on Instagram have learned to manipulate them basically to have a huge following and make money. I think it's hilarious. And kudos to them for doing it. This next lady on TikTok kind of shows what happens when you run into a grief tourist in real life situations, such as for her, it's in the grocery store. All right, here we go.
Meredith! Hey girl, how you been? I heard it's been kind of a year for you, what with cancer and chemo and everything.
It's been a couple of rough years,
But you know what they say, God doesn't give you more than you can handle.
Okay, I hate when people do this. All you're gonna do is make it worse, and you are not helping at all by saying that. Not even the tiniest little bit. In fact, you're bringing a more negative experience to that person by saying that while they're in the middle of their own version of hell. So just for those of you that say that, I know you mean well, but there's a time and a place, and in the middle of suffering is not it.
Girl, how's your hair coming back in? Is it not growing?
Oh, it's kind of, it's cold outside.
And your sweet daddy, he's an angel now. He's an angel now. He's in a better place.
See, they bring this stuff up to add to your grief. There is no reason for that. And they always do it, don't they? They keep bringing bad stuff up. Are you an energy vampire sucking the grief off me? What the heck is your problem?
He's an angel now. He's in a better place. He's an angel.
I love the ending with her biblically accurate angel. That's pretty funny. Okay, but I hear you. What do I do if I have to deal with a grief tourist? Well, there is always this option. That always cracks me up. I think that would stop them in their tracks right there. All right, done with the TikToks. Okay, so sorry. All jokes aside, you have a grief tourist. What do you do about it? How do you deal with them? The first thing you want to decide, consider, is this person someone I want a relationship with? If the answer is no, block them or ask them to leave. If the answer is yes, and you do want to continue having a relationship with this person, maybe they're a family member, a cousin, a best friend, someone you care about, then really the best thing you can do is to be super blunt, open, and honest about what they can actually do to support you. A lot of people want to do the right thing and they're trying to help. They just have no clue how to do this. I've fallen into this trap a lot because I end up saying literally the worst thing I could possibly say to people because my brain freaks out and that's all I can think of. So maybe you just need to tell them how they can help, and then that will give them kind of a path to go down that's not so insensitive. Okay, so you do this, and they're not really interested in listening to what you asked for. Or they're, like here we call it Minnesota nice, where people will say nice things, they'll say they'll do nice things. They have no intention of doing it. They don't actually want you to take them up on the offer of whatever they actually offered. They just want to seem like good people. This is something that drives me crazy with Minnesota. Minnesota nice seems nice to anyone not from Minnesota, and everyone in Minnesota, it drives us freaking crazy because it's basically passive aggressive turned up to 11.
These go to 11.
And here's the thing. If they do that, if they say they'll do something and don't follow through, or if they say they're just not really interested in doing what you asked them to do nicely, then don't be afraid to tell them you need to take a little break away from them for a while for your own mental health. Honestly, if they can't accept that you need to take a little break from the relationship for your own mental health, they're not very good people. But make sure to always be direct but polite. Make sure when you're saying these things, always use I statements to express how their actions affect you. For example, you have someone giving you advice like you should try yoga, you should try this detox diet, because they are trying to help in their own way and you really don't want it. So be like, look, I'm sorry, but I really have a hard time accepting advice from people who don't actually have the condition or a medical degree. And also remember, not everyone's doing it to be a jerk or to be a troll or to be evil. They might not be aware of what they're doing. Like I said, I put my foot in my mouth constantly. I am terrible at giving people consolation and helping with their grief. I never learned that trick. So be prepared to explain it to them in a, again, direct and polite way. But here's the interesting thing. Not all grief tourism is actually bad. In fact, a lot of it is not only natural to human beings, but is educational. So remember earlier how I said there was a modern version and an older version of what grief tourist meant? Well, the older definition of grief tourist is a term used to describe people who travel to places where a tragedy or a disaster has occurred in order to experience the sense of loss or mourning associated with the event. Grief tourism can also include graves and memorials of historical figures or even famous people who've died. Some people use grief tourism as a way to connect to others who've had a similar loss, while a lot of human beings do it out of morbid curiosity. For example, some people would go to Auschwitz or Pearl Harbor and try and learn from that history, to not repeat it, to feel the loss and the mourning so that they can learn and therefore hopefully not repeat it again. Whereas the morbid curiosity people naturally have would be when people rubberneck on the road during accidents and have to look at it and slow down even though they can't see much and they probably don't even want to actually see it if it is bad. That's a natural human morbid curiosity. And then there's people who find others who have experienced the same thing. Some critics argue that this last process is kind of exploitive, disrespectful, and can actually disrupt the process of healing for some people affected by the tragedy. So for instance, I'm sure when 9/11 happened and it was all over the news and all over the news and all over the news and all over the news, the people that were in the middle of that had to deal with that. And I'm sure that that made healing really, really hard. And that's got to keep reopening some old wounds. I know I have PTSD based on my last marriage, and TikTok has these story time kind of things where it'll tell people's personal stories that are traumatic. And if it goes through a traumatic marital abuse story, it really revs up my PTSD and just freaks me out. And I don't need trigger warnings. I'm an adult. I can turn it off the second I see that happening. But the fact that these things are out there and out there so much is because of all the grief tourists that want to hear about that and got the morbid curiosity for it. That's why there's so much of that out there. It's a moneymaker, frankly. For some more videos on chronic illness and mental health, try this playlist here or check out the latest episode I've done. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day and keep on surviving, my friends.